everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly series. I'm Becky, and I'll be your host. And today we're talking with the team from Global Convoy about driving across the world in a school bus. Everyone, thank you so much. We're going to start here. We have Joel Chevalier, Joel, sorry, Joel Chevalier, Becca Marsh, and Max White from Global Convoy. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I am so excited to hear your stories. So I first want to hear about your backgrounds and how did you guys come up with this idea in the first place for this overland adventure company?
Who wants to go first?
You guys go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I was working in an office at IBM back in the day, and a friend of mine told me about something called the Mongol Rally, and that yanked me out of office life and into the world of adventure, which is where I met Joel and Becca.
Before starting any of this, I was studying to be a teacher. And then I found out about Max's trip around the world and just decided to go for it.
And I was just working hospitality at seasonal jobs for like national parks and things like that, kind of bouncing in between gigs. I was just happening to be on a backpacking trip through Europe, and I met the right people and ended up on a trip that lasted a lot longer, about 8 years longer than I anticipated. So
And
incredible.
it was the Mongol Rally trip that I went on that at the end, having not had enough, I wondered if anyone would want to go further than Mongolia and in worse vehicles. And Joel and Becca were two of the first people to say they were ready to commit to buying a 75-pound car and trying to drive it around the world. We managed it. It took a year and it was incredibly stressful and incredibly fun. And afterwards, we all had kind of had life-changing experience and wondered if we could try and bottle that and then serve it out to people in the future. And that's roughly the beginning of it all.
Did you say 75 pounds, Max?
yeah.
Yes. Beck and I split that originally, and then later on, Joel chipped in as well.
Well, we needed a new timing belt, and that was my buy-in. I was like, okay, the timing belt now belongs to me. So if I go, that goes.
Wow. Okay, we could do hours for these adventure stories. This is incredible, but how many trips have you now completed with Global Convoy?
So I guess since our round the world trip, we've done around 11, mostly around Europe. But in 2019, we decided to drive to Kyrgyzstan, just on a one-way trip. And then unfortunately, the pandemic hit after. So we had a little bit of a gap then, but then we restarted in, I think, September 2021. We thought we would start with something a little bit smaller, just because, countries were starting to reopen. So we wanted to follow the old Iron Curtain route. So we did a little trip from Estonia down to Bulgaria and finished in Bansko.
So by smaller, we mean like the length of Europe for the most part.
Smaller for us.
Wow. So can you tell us about some of the places that you have been on these 11 trips? Have you pretty much covered every country at this point?
No, there's so many places, so little time, kind of thing. No, well, we've gotten the Americas pretty well. Yeah, we've gotten the Americas pretty well done. With still quite a few countries actually that we haven't been in South America. But like we haven't been anywhere near India, haven't been anywhere in Southeast Asia. We did do Japan and South Korea, which were amazing. But yeah, there's all of China. There's so many more places. So yeah, we got a lot of work to do.
There's so many questions I have, but I do want to focus on your most recent journey from the top to the bottom of the world, where you started in Chicago, and I believe it was just over a year ago. How did you guys come up with the idea to buy a school bus and drive from the US did you finish in Argentina?
Yes. Yeah. Ushuaia, Argentina, which is oh yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's whose idea was this of
Sorry.
the three of you in the first place? And whose idea was the school bus?
Well, from the very beginning on the around the world trip, we figured we loved traveling with people, and the more the merrier. And it was often hard to source lots of spare vehicles or have people bring their own. So we'd always been talking about a bus from maybe week one, even for years and years. And then in a recent trip, I think Joel was around the campfire with a guy that came on our trip called Nick. I mean, Joel, if you want to say what you were chatting about, or
Well, it was just all of us. Then like yeah, we were in Morocco, and we were just kind of, Nick had come out for this trip, and we were just kind of chatting around the fire, and we always throw out ridiculous ideas of what, you know, how we can top the next trip or something like that. And we'd always had this dream about doing a bus, and somebody mentioned American school bus and doing the States, and Nick was kind of like, oh, you know, like I know a place we could work on it, and kind of you know, made the dream a little more realistic. And then so when we partnered up with him to start putting it together, that's when it really kind of became something where it was like, oh, this is actually, we might be able to pull this off. And yeah, now we're here.
I think once we got the bus, we then started looking at where we would take this American bus, because obviously we normally set out from Europe. I think it was around this time Joel and Becca found, is it a 75-year-old documentary? I don't want to get the years
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, it was a by Sullivan C. Richardson. It was we just kind of stumbled upon it off of like YouTube. And it was the first expedition to ever do the Pan American, even though it wasn't built back then. So it was kind of like the dream was there, and they just wanted to do it to see what was done. And this was back in like 1938. And they completed it and made a documentary, wrote a book, which we actually have over here. But yeah, and so that gave us a route to follow, which was super awesome. So we got to mix a little bit of history, and you know, it was a pre-planned route, although it was back in 1938 when most of the roads didn't even exist. So
Wow, that's incredible. I did not know there was this the connection with the book. Do you plan to write a book now that you're done, you've finished the trip?
Maybe. I think our main focus is making a documentary. So after finding this original trip, we decided that it would be kind of cool to, in some ways, try and recreate it. I mean, this is like a lifetime later, so there's going to be so many differences. And we kind of saw the bus as an opportunity to create our own challenge, like our own modern day challenge, to see what it's like driving the Pan American. And we spent a lot of time like trying to revisit some of the places they went. So we've got some kind of like comparison footage. So we're hoping to make a documentary that kind of looks at what it was like for them traveling and what's changed now in terms of infrastructure and routes and things like that.
and some of the things they thought were going to exist that don't exist, you know, yet, or you know, some of the things that didn't exist then that are, you know, very modern day now. But yeah.
Yeah, like I might be getting it wrong, but wasn't it Machu Picchu hadn't been discovered when they were going through? Or one of these several of the ancient ruins we went to that are now big names just didn't exist when they were passing through. So that was wild to think it's been that recent.
Wow, it was just waiting to be discovered. And now just to
Yeah.
think of all the tourists that walk around it every day, it's so incredible. I'm curious about the bus. I have some questions. First of all, did you manage to get it for 75 pounds or dollars this time?
We wish.
No, it wasn't that cheap. No, but so like I said, Nick was kind of our front man, helping us out on the US side, because obviously we're based in the UK. And basically he just went through an auction group that basically works with school districts out in the Minnesota area, to basically, once they're out of there, because they only have so much time of life when they're working for the school districts. And so we actually bought ours 2 months before, or 2 months after it was decommissioned. So 2 months before we bought it, it was still being used to cart kids around, which we thought was pretty cool. And yeah, we just bought it through the auction house, and then had it at Nick's family's place. They had a little garage. And so parked it up there to do the transition. It took us about a month. We didn't have too much time. But we set it up with all the bare necessities. We changed the seats around a little bit, tried to make it more into a comfortable living space, since there was going to be so many of us on there, and have a kitchen, have storage, running water, which was a big one. Never had luxuries like that on any trips before. And then we also set up like a sleeping setup, so like hammocks that could go hang from the roof if we have to sleep inside the bus, and a few little bunks, and some of the tables would turn down into sleeping spaces, and yeah, stuff like that. Catch me up if I'm forgetting anything, but that was like I said, we had a month to do the whole transition, so it was quite the quick turnaround.
Wow. How many beds would you say there were total?
We could
beds or sleeping spaces, because
yeah, that's the
Let's go with sleeping spaces.
It was set up so Joel did most of the interior work, and it was planned that if we ever had 20 people, everyone could sleep in the bus. Whether or not that would be a good sleep was debatable, but in an emergency, absolutely everyone could.
Comfort
So
wasn't priority.
The storage spaces were actually bunk beds, so you could sleep there. There were all these hammock hooks going along the ceiling, so people would hammock above the people sleeping on the floor. There was space at the back. The tables folded down into double beds. You could sleep under those double beds as people were sleeping on top. And then, yeah,
that was
there
Max's favorite place.
Yeah. And the roof, if you wanted.
I really can't wait to see this documentary. I can't imagine what a school bus would look like with that many sleep spaces. But that does bring me to my next question. So along this 1 year journey, how many people joined you? And like, how long was their average stay with you on that journey?
So we had around 20 people throughout the whole adventure. When we were getting people to sign up, we tried to get them for like a minimum of a month, just because it's quite difficult logistically to find airports, in smaller than a month stint. There were 4 of us that did the whole thing from Alaska to Argentina, but like I said, we had a total of around 20 people that kind of popped in and out. I think most people stayed for like 4 to 6 months. I mean, it was about 8 months in total. So we had a few of the crew that stayed for the majority of the journey. But yeah, a few other people coming in and out. But yeah, it really changed as we went along. Some people decided to stay longer, so they were only supposed to be there for a month and then stayed for 3. Some people had to go home earlier because of things out of their control. So it really fluctuated.
We had 2 girls from the inaugural trip that we did, where we were just kind of testing the bus out to see if it would be feasible to try and drive it down south, that weren't signed up for the long haul trip. And after the first trip, they were just like, is there any room? So they ended up joining for most of the entirety of it.
Wow. And how about the driving? Who was driving most of the time? Were you guys all taking turns? Was that part of the sign up? Was like, can you drive this kind of vehicle, or can you
It was
drive?
me, Max, and Nick. We all took turns kind of swapping out. And yeah, the plan was to get a few more people on, but it just never happened. And yeah, a 40-foot, 12-meter bus, takes a little while to get used to.
It's not just like,
like
hey,
Max
you,
was best because he only had like about a week, 2 weeks to learn to drive it. Is how much was it that the case, Max?
2 weeks was very nerve-wracking to drive,
Yeah.
and I think Joel and Nick had a good amount of practice beforehand because they'd been out in Minnesota earlier than I had. But even after that, it was still nerve-wracking a lot of the time. But when it was like open spaces like the Bolivian salt flats, like everyone like had a go at driving just where they definitely couldn't hit anything, because turning that is just not what you would think.
Oh no. Yeah. I think it's not one of those cases where you find someone on the bus, hey, you look like you've had a good sleep, get up in the seat and can you take over? It's
Yeah.
got to be well planned out. Yeah.
I
Well,
think the most challenging parts were probably like colonial cities, and like if it was anything that wasn't really modern or it was built back, when the Spain had kind of had control over like different parts of Central and South America. A lot of those cities are much more Europeanized and not designed for anything of that width and or length.
yeah, I can only imagine. I'm wondering how did you vet people before they joined the Global Convoy? You mentioned a little bit like you wanted them to try and stay for a month, and how much did it cost to join?
So we've been doing this for a few years, and we've kind of got a bit of a system where we'll advertise an upcoming adventure on like our website and our social media, and then people can head to our website and fill out a sign-up form. And from there, we do get a good gist of who would be a good fit for the trip. And most importantly for us, we want people to enjoy it. We don't just want as many people as possible. We want the right people. And we'll be very open and honest if we're like, hey, maybe in a few years, but this doesn't seem like a good fit for you. But even after the online survey, then we have a phone call. Normally it's Joel doing it, but we'll all take turns. And that's just a very frank, personal, somewhat intrusive conversation just to see where people are at personally and mentally. Because some people, we've had people come on trips in the past and they did not realize that we weren't a tour company offering a package until the day they arrived. And so we do everything we can to make sure people know this is an adventure and all the good and bad that comes with that. And I guess in terms of costs, we normally just figure out a budget for how much we think running a trip will cost and just divide that between as many people as come, to give us as good a buffer for the unknown, but really we just want to make the trip happen.
It's more like we try to kind of crowdfund, so it's the more of us we can get on board, the cheaper we can make it. But the one thing that we really have to stress, which is the big difference to us compared to other organizations, is that we're not a tour, and it's more it's an adventure to see if it can be done, and with that means that nothing's organized. Like it's not going to be, our number one thing is, it's not a vacation. You're definitely going to suffer on this adventure a little bit here and there, or a lot, I don't know, but depending on the person's idea. But yeah,
you're expected to be part of a team.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a pleasure cruise. It's a journey, and you're part of the crew.
So breakfast isn't waiting for you at 8 a.m. sharp every morning on the bus.
You'd be lucky to get breakfast. It's a good day if there's coffee. We'll put it like that.
That does bring me to my next question. How do you handle the food situation every day? Is it a mix of like eating in restaurants at a kind of on a trip like this, or mostly eating on the bus, cooking on the bus?
Well, kind of like that's another big one where we try to be super flexible with, because for me personally, I find like wherever I travel to, a lot of the culture that I get to experience tends to be through the food. But I'm also a bit food centric, which not everybody is, so that's fine. But yeah, so we try to be flexible. So also with budget, trying to keep the budget low. While we were traveling through the US and especially like Canada and Alaska, because they're so far out there, getting like a tomato is a little more expensive than it would be in other areas. So we would usually stock up and then cook. Most of the time we were out there, I think we cooked for ourselves. I think maybe we went out for dinner once in Alaska for pizza or something like that. But the rest of the time we were just cooking for ourselves. Maybe we pick up some lunch from a gas station every now and again, but way more cost efficient to just cook for ourselves. But then when we would get down to like Central America, suddenly lunch goes from $7 to $10 to $2 to $3 kind of thing. So suddenly it changes the dynamic quite a lot. And although we still, love to work with local ingredients, and of course we're sometimes too far out to be able to go to restaurants or things like that. We need to cook for ourselves. We'll probably eat out a lot more depending on the country that we're going through, and yeah, sometimes it's way more cost effective to just go out to eat than it is to cook a big meal for everybody. But
and sometimes I think, especially with a trip of this length, you get like cravings for tastes of home or comfort food. So that definitely plays a big part. Like if we've had a bit of a tough day, or it's the moods have been a bit low, then maybe we'd be like, okay, let's all go out to eat. Or if we've got a birthday, maybe we'd be like, let's do something different or special to celebrate.
But then sometimes you just want a cheeseburger and there's nobody who does those, so you just gotta make it yourself.
Yeah, I'm sure this was different because you had a bus with like some kitchen facilities, which was different from the previous trips.
That was a huge upgrade for us. Normally we just carry like a burner on the roof of a car and then we'll just pull off and cook it from there. So to have a kitchen with running water was pretty bougie for us.
I am curious, like, what was the reaction by the locals when you were driving through with the school bus? I mean, I can imagine in Central and South America, you're getting out of this American school bus, all these people, and what were some of the memorable reactions?
Well, it's interesting because at first in America and Canada, I think people were not particularly impressed by seeing it, but when they realized what we were doing, they were like, oh, that's cool. Most of Central America, not a particularly big deal. But once we hit South America, it was insane. Like we had starting in Colombia, but all the way down, and especially in Chile. Like there was a day I remember really well. Joel was driving and a guy raced past us on the motorway so he could pull over, stop, get out and take a photo. And later, I think a day later, we got tagged in that photo from some other Instagram account. And just all of South America, but especially Chile, they went nuts for the bus. They could not get enough. And it was that felt pretty cool to be.
Yeah, we were kind of celebrities, like just driving around, we were just constantly waving to everybody as we were going. And it was quite jarring when we got back and I was just driving a normal car and I didn't have 20 people waving at me, as I'm driving down the street saying hello all the time.
Did you have a lot of people asking to get on the bus that were just like locals on the street and wanting to join
Well,
the
they
trip?
didn't even ask. They just came on at the time.
I think, I mean, we did, I mean, we thought that taking an American school busket's like such an icon of the Americas. So we did think that there would be some sort of attention. But I think we were quite overwhelmed by how much, and it was all positive. Like we had so many people in different places really want to get on, and messages from families that had been on the bus, and they would they message us on Instagram after saying, you made my kid's dream come true by going on a school bus. And yeah, it was really heartwarming. And I think we kept getting so many reference to so many movies, and I think particularly the American film industry and culture is everywhere globally. So, we were in Colombia and every other person would be like, it's the Simpsons bus, because the Simpsons is such a big TV show that's something that they relate the bus to. So yeah, it was kind of cool. Lots of fun.
No, it's like in a sense we've all been on that bus, this global American culture of TV.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay, I'm curious, why do you choose to travel over land like this instead of flying groups out to specific destinations and spending time there together?
I think, I mean, like we were just talking about the kind of the unique interactions. I think we really found this when we drove around the world, that you get to reach the places that you can't just fly into. And it really allows you to kind of get under the skin of a country and truly meet the people. On the drive down in Chile, we stopped at this campground in the bus, and obviously people were curious and they're asking what we're doing, and they invited us over to their campfire. They were locals from the like native tribes, the Chango people, and they showed us how they cook their fish traditionally on a fire, and we had a big bonfire together. And these kinds of interactions and experiences, I think, are more challenging to find, if not, they don't exist if you just fly in and out from city to city. And that's, I guess, one of the main reasons why we choose to travel by land, because you get to meet the people that live in these areas that aren't necessarily tourist destinations, and you get to have a real meaningful experience.
more the experiences that you have to stumble upon rather than, you know, organize and, you know, book.
The things you can't buy.
Yeah, like you said, this is not a tour. This is like nothing is planned, and that's part of the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just even as well, driving, you see so much more of the landscape. You really get to understand a country like geographically a lot better. So it's convenient to fly from city to city, but you don't see the rugged landscape in between.
A really great example is kind of like Peru, where driving through it, it's just so drastically different. Like every section of the country that you're in. I mean, once you first enter from the north going down south, it starts with like the Atacama Desert, which is like pretty wicked dry desert, you know, nothing for miles and miles and miles, and it's a really unique environment. And then you get to the coast and you have this kind of coastland desert, and then as you get further south, suddenly it starts changing into forest, and you know, it's just you get all these really unique terrains, which kind of shows you just how diverse Peru is. Where it's, I think when most people think of Peru, they think of like, you know, Machu Picchu and the Andes and whatnot. And you know, it just has so much more. And if you fly straight to Cusco, then of course you're only going to see that perspective. Whereas when you're driving through, you get to see, you know, all the colors that the landscape has to offer.
Yeah, beautifully said. So I'm wondering about the challenges of this trip. Like, did you have, it sounds like so many positive things were happening with people recognizing the bus, but did you have challenges? Did you break down? Did you get stopped somewhere?
Yeah, so kind of right from the beginning, we lost the transmission, which was awful, and we thought that was actually going to end the trip because obviously transmission in a normal car is pretty expensive, so let alone a school bus. But we managed to get really lucky and found a used one for like 700 and got some guys to not, you know, charge us an arm and a leg to install it, and luckily it worked after it was sitting in some scrap yard for God knows how long before we got it. Um, but yeah, I mean, there was tons like learning the mechanics with the bus and having different, I wouldn't say any major, other than the transmission, any other major breakdowns. But of course, like being on rattly roads, things, you know, come unbolted and unscrewed and start to fall off, or, you know, all the rust that we had throughout the trip, a lot of different things sheared off. But then honestly, I think those challenges were kind of straightforward compared to some of the more political issues that we kind of ran into when we were in Panama. They had protests about you know, their kind of like personal freedoms, which are great, but it sucked for us because they cut off highways. That's just how they protest against their governments. So that's got us stuck for about a month and made us miss our boat to get down to South America. Ecuador declared a state of emergency, limiting access to the country about 3 days before we entered. And so Ecuador went from, you know, I think we had like a week or like almost 2 weeks planned in there. So when we got there, they said, you have 10 days to drive through, which we took and we're very thankful for, because at least that meant that we could carry on the trip, because it's kind of hard to go around Ecuador.
Wow.
But yeah, so you know, there was plenty of challenges, but again, you know, it's just the adventure, and you have to cross them when you get to them, and if you go in with the mindset that you're gonna have some struggles here and there, you hopefully handle it a lot better. I don't know if I handled it as well as I would like to think we did, but
Sounds like this documentary is going to have quite a lot of drama, which is going to make for a great film. And I think I wouldn't want just a every day's the same drive from the US all the way down. Nothing ever happens except we, you know, have different meals. What fun is that? We got to have some challenges along the way.
Yeah, exactly. Some mix up in it.
True adventure.
Yeah.
True adventure that you said that you can't just buy.
Yeah.
I do have a really important question for those who are listening and watching that are nomads. So, can a nomad work on this bus? Like, could you go for a month and get any kind of internet connection and think that you can actually do some kind of online work?
I guess it
In theory,
depends.
yes. But yeah, as Max said, I think
We
it
wouldn't
depends.
suggest it.
Pretty much everywhere that we drove, we had phone service. And I mean, we drove a lot of the Pan American Highway 7 years ago, and seeing the difference now in infrastructure, pretty much every cafe has Wi-Fi. You know, it is doable, but on this particular type of adventure, I think it's quite stressful. Maybe for someone who's a freelancer, but definitely not someone who needs to make phone calls at set times, because you just don't know. Like, we had breakdowns and then we're stuck somewhere for like 2 days with no phone service. So as long as you're flexible, or the majority of your work is not reliant on the internet, then yeah, it's doable. Maybe investing in like Starlink and things like that would help. But I think for us, the majority of people that joined us were there for the adventure. They were taking their like sabbatical or gap year style. So we were almost encouraged being a bit disconnected.
I mean, we did have people who came and worked on the whole trip.
Yeah.
But they obviously were running at half, probably less than half capacity. You know, it was kind of as and when. Although we had a signal booster to help us keep kind of connected. You know, sometimes we would just end up in places where there was just no signal to have. And yeah, so it's definitely a challenge, and something that when people were asking about it, we were just kind of like, you can't guarantee it, so wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah, I just want to have that clarified for everybody watching. Like we have events for nomads throughout the year, like Nomad Cruise, where you're not, expecting good Wi-Fi in the ocean either. So just know what you're getting into, and but it's also so wonderful to have a chance to get offline and just put the work away for however long you decide to go. So yeah.
And another big one is like because we were kind of, this was the plan was to try and kind of start and finish at a specific time. Because we had that, I think that kept us to a schedule, making it a lot more difficult for something like that. It's where we met tons of overlanders that were had a van or something like that were going down. A lot of Germans. But they shipped their van down from home, and they had kitted it out, more for their needs, and would have something like Starlink or whatever. And they were going a lot slower, which gave them a lot more time to be able to just kind of, hang out, have a bit more of a normal work week, I guess, whatever that work week looks like. I know some people it can be 3 days a week, for a couple hours a day. Some people it needs to be a 9 to 5 kind of type deal. They're able to make it work. So it's definitely possible. It's just in the way that we were doing it, wouldn't suggest it.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for sharing about this amazing adventure overland, and congratulations on finishing this journey. I'm curious, what do you have planned next? Where are you guys going to go?
We've got a few things planned in currently, but nothing in stone yet. As soon as anything's confirmed, we'll be putting it on our website and our social media. We did love the bus. We definitely want to do more bus things. So if anyone's
Not the last bus we'll ever have, I'm sure.
Bus in America, keep
Spoiler
an
alert.
eye out.
Okay. I'm excited to see what you guys are going to do next, because I would love to join the Global Convoy sometime. I hope everybody who listened and watched to this, that you feel the same. Is there anything else that you guys want to add before we go?
No. Well, keep
an eye out for the documentary.
Keep an eye out for the documentary, and
Yes.
we're going to be going to shows around Europe, hopefully, to kind of promote the doc and maybe a book. We'll see how that goes. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves as it goes, but yeah, just keep in touch, and follow us on socials, and come have a drink with us if we at any shows, or if we're in the same area at the same time. Feel free to reach out.
Where can people follow you if they want to learn more?
So our Instagram,
social medias.
Just
social medias,
in Global Convoy, we should come up.
Yeah, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, we do the whole gambit.
We are going to put the links in the description of these videos, but for those just listening, yeah, Global Convoy, you'll find them. And again, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and wishing you all the best on your future adventures.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
You too.
for having us.
Thank you.